Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. My name is Nurul Fatim binti Muhammad Asri and I am from Group 11. So today, me and my group mate, Nur Syakira binti Abdul Hamid, Siti Nur Najibah binti Maknur, Ainur Syakira binti Mahari and Fatin Najah binti Mat Nazuki will present to you guys on our topic, the issues on self-online assessment in psychological test. Committee on Psychological Test and Assessment (CPTA) discussed issues related to psychological testing and assessment on the internet. They recognize that as psychological test instruments become more readily available via the internet, issues arise concerning test reliability, validity, administration, item security, and the test taker confidentiality. Other issues that arise include access of tests by individuals who are not qualified to administer such tests and interpret the results, and tests that have been modified, changed, or translated without appropriate permission or validation. Moreover, it is possible that tests delivered on the internet may be inappropriate for some groups, psychometrically flawed, or poorly translated into a variety of language.
My name is Siti Nur Najibah binti Maknur. I will proceed to the factors driving the increasing use of online testing. First, the rise of globalization and the increasing need for speed and efficiency in test administration and subsequent decision making. Second, advance in technology including computer hardware, software, and connectivity. Third, cheaper access to the technology resulting in a significant uptake in computer usage and internet access globally. Fourth, enhance data security and increase speed and efficiency in data transmission and storage. Fifth, data can be easily and cheaply collected to assist with the development of norms for specific groups or locations.
Ethical issues abound for psychologists who use the internet in their practice. Many of these issues are being addressed by specific American Psychological Association committees. The first ethical issues to be considered is the professional context in which the internet testing takes place. The issue raised by internet testing is how testing is placed into a professional context when conducted on the internet. Many tests on the internet are accompanied by little other than some broad statements about the use of the test. Furthermore, test taker may not read instruction or may ignore disclaimers more than in face-to-face situations. Test materials that are posted for self-administration and interpretation on the internet should be accompanied by a statement to the test taker that clearly defines the bounds and limitation of the professional relationship with the client that can be achieved through this medium. The contact with test takers using the internet is indirect and there are not sufficient means to confirm that they have understood the instruction and statements about the intended use of the test or how conclusions have been reached or recommendations have been taken. Steps must be taken to explain the test takers how test information will or will not be used in conjunction with other information to form conclusions and recommendations. The next area of ethical issues involve the appropriate use of internet testing or assessment. Internet testing in many cases has been simply a process of putting paper and pencil or computerized tests onto a new medium. Tests that may have been developed and researched in a proctored setting are now often being used in an unproctored context that is facilitated by the internet and its widening accessibility. This approach calls into the question the proper applications of the techniques. The effect of both the medium and the context require additional research to ensure appropriate use of tests and assessment on the internet. The next area of ethical issues involve informed consent. The impersonal and standardized nature of internet testing programs are not likely to fit all individuals the same. In other words, it may be very difficult to provide true informed consent to all individuals completing tests through the internet. In many cases, it will not be known whether the person completing the test is capable of giving informed consent or whether permission is required from a legally authorized person. The next area of ethical and professional issues involve the appropriate release of test data. Psychological test data reveal very personal details about human characteristics, behaviors, preferences, and capabilities. This type of data is not only valuable to psychologists, but is also valuable to sales, marketing, political, and other groups who may or may not have the individual's best interest in mind when deciding how to use this data.
My name is Nur Shakira binti Abdul Hamid. I will proceed to the technical issues. It is important for all groups of test takers to have equality of access. This not only has implications for the test design and content, but also for the technology used to deliver the test. Technology is not always reliable. There might be connection or internet problems, energy breaks, and other things like that. Also, there is a cost involved in online assessment software. The technical issues divide into, which is host or server hardware considerations and client hardware considerations. Firstly, host or server hardware considerations, which is most host provider plans limit the amount of data that will be transferred to and from a site within a monthly period. Clients are charged for data exchange that exceed this maximum data transfer rate. Secondly, client hardware considerations. The hardware characteristics of the client's display require special consideration where time stimuli are presented. The first consideration is the display refresh rate, which indicates how many times per second the screen gets redrawn from top to bottom. When presentation of stimuli must be controlled to the millisecond, application must take into consideration or attempt to control the refresh rates of the display.
My name is Ainul Shakira binti Bahari. I will explain about the test or client integrity issue. Client may be dishonest when answering question. For example, at home, they will not take it privately. Similarly, in the office, colleague can sit down with the tester and give the answer to the tester. Therefore, the score that he or she get in the online assessment may not be accurate. When the goal of the test taker differ from the goal of the test user, it is important to confirm that identity of the person answering items. Furthermore, when a test or assessment is not administered at a secure test center, there are a number of ways to check a test taker identity.
Next, I will continue about test security issue. Security of data transmission and storage must also be considered. Much has been made of the hacker threat or risk of unauthorized interception of or access to test data by third parties. According to RIPS, observed that configuration errors or certain data transmission techniques result in possible confidential data being openly available via the website in the case of online psychological experiments, and that this happens frequently. Online assessment is not very safe and easy to hack, so client data will be easily spread. When spread, confidential or client data will be revealed. On the client side, one of the most important security considerations is the prevention of unauthorized copying by the examined or an observer and printing of test items. This can partially be achieved within a browser by disabling access to menu selections such as cut, copy, paste, export, save, save as, print, print screen, and so forth.
I am Fatina Jah binti Mak Razuki and my metric number is 1180135. Then I will talk about the issue in special population, including people with disabling condition and culturally and linguistically diverse person. According to Nagliari et al. 2004, a critical issue for people with disabling condition is to determine the appropriate accommodation. A person with a disability is demonstrating the clear relationship between the individual's deficit and the nature of the accommodation. As psychologists begin to make recommendations to institutions on behalf of individuals with disabilities or on behalf of institutions attempting to design fair testing practice for groups of individuals with disabilities, it is important to consider new types of accommodation to address the unique problem inherent in internet assessment. Accommodation may be considered in terms of operating at the level of individual or at the level of the group. At the level of individuals, adequate accommodation include alteration in the testing environment. Unique challenges may be encountered with internet assessment because the computer may be permanently affixed in one position, like adjusting the height and placement of the table on which the computer sits is critical for an individual in a wheelchair. For some disabilities, accommodation require alteration to test administration itself rather than often recommended for individuals who have a sight impairment or who have a specific reading disability like dyslexia person. At the group level, a lack of equal access to technology may result in proper test performance for some groups. For example, during cognitive testing, individuals who are less familiar with computers will have a greater cognitive load due to divided attention than individuals who are familiar with computers. Furthermore, a lack of familiarity with the security and privacy features of the internet also may influence performance. In this sense, low access to computers may be viewed as a disability that requires accommodation to ensure fair testing. Then, culturally and linguistically diverse group. There are many culturally and linguistically diverse groups, including Latinos and African Americans. They have been among the last to connect to the internet because of economic or access issue. Yet, the number of people from these and other minority groups who have access to the internet is increasing dramatically. Like the majority Euro-American population, members of this group have also begun to access the internet for information related to mental health and psychology. For example, it is not unusual for a Spanish-speaking Latino to seek out information about a particular mental condition or even a psychological test instrument through the internet. The person is now likely to find information in Spanish from an internet site in Latin America. There remain many unanswered questions regarding the psychological testing and assessment of this group via the internet. People may use old and outdated instruments in a manner that is inappropriate or problematic, which may then result in negative consequences for client and the public.
As for the recommendation for future, first and perhaps most important is that the current psychometric standards, including test reliability and validity, should be applied even though the way in which the tests are developed and delivered may be quite different. Internet testing should be subjected to the same defensible standards for assessment tools as paper and pencil tests when the results are used to make important decisions.
Next, tests can be placed on the internet in a manner that suggests authority and conveys confidence. Test developers and publishing companies that enter into internet testing programs should ensure that internet tests are held to the same psychometric standards as traditional tests. For example, documentation summarizing standardization samples, reliability and validity, as well as additional evidence such as equivalence of tests delivered on internet and paper, uniformity of stimulus quality on different displays, and so forth, to ensure high-quality test administration.
While the internet has considerable potential as a means of testing, assessment will require the integration of information obtained via this medium with other relevant information. For this reason, what is typically available on the internet is testing in contrast to psychological assessment. The test result obtained on the internet may be inaccurate for variety of reasons, and therefore there must be a professional available to verify the validity of the information and assist in interpretation. Although it is conceivable that future internet testing methods may approach a psychological assessment, the requirements for appropriate psychological assessment exceed current internet capabilities.
And the last one is provide extensive information. According to the American Educational Research Association et al. 1999, the standards for educational and psychological testing need to provide extensive information about what is needed to justify a particular use of a test. Internet test developers and the test users should carefully read the standards and ensure that their tests are used in appropriate ways. For the conclusion, the importance of this new method of testing and assessment is clear, as is the need for formal guideline for internet-based tests and the many ways in which psychologists may use this environment for a variety of applications. Time has changed, and as the internet has brought testing out of the secure environment controlled by a licensed professional psychologist or psychometrician. As testing becomes more accessible, it is important to realize that the principle of good testing still apply and the ethical standards for psychologists are still fundamental. There are many issues that await resolution. Over the years to come, much research and critical thinking will be required to address this issue. We believe that psychologists should look forward to this work with excitement and enthusiasm.